which scenario is more immoral? 10-year-old girl who has completed puberty gets legally married with the consent of her parents to a good believing Christian man who is 25 years old. That's scenario one. Scenario two, a 10-year-old girl has a 10-year-old boyfriend and they fornicate whenever they want. Which is more immoral?
I don't have to answer that because that's an either-or situation. I say they're both
one or
immoral.
the other. Which one is more immoral?
No, both are immoral.
Which one is more immoral?
Both are immoral, Daniel.
So fornication is happening rampantly. Do you have the same kind of feelings of that being evil and wanting to stop it? And you put that big slide about Christians are going to stand against child marriage. I can also put a slide up that says Christians are going to stand against fornication that's happening rampant throughout society.
Yes, we condemn it.
Where?
I'm condemning it right now. Hear me. I'm condemning it.
But you didn't think that was more immoral. The child marriage scenario was not more immoral than the fornication.
We're debating child marriage, and I'm pointing out it's immoral. I can also agree fornication.
So you did not say that was more immoral. Okay, got it.
I have no reason to say one or more.
According to the Bible, you do have a reason to say it because the Bible explicitly condemns sex out of marriage, but it has nothing to say about child marriage. According to some Christian sources, Jesus' mother was either 12 or 14 when married to Joseph. When it comes to child marriage, what do you think is more likely? Option one, Jesus held views similar to those found in the society of his time and thus had no objection to child marriage. Or option two, Jesus held views similar to the United States in 2023 and thus viewed child marriage as very evil. Which one is more likely?
Again, I quoted scholars like Michael Satlow that argue the average age was not 13, especially in Palestine.
Is there any pre-modern scholar who has this opinion?
Yeah, Cyrannus of Ephesus, as I cited in my opening statement. Giles of Rome.
What did you say? Repeat what he said.
All right, I'll go to Cyrannus of Ephesus. He says, within regard to the birth passage, difficult labor takes place when the uterus is either a narrow orifice or a small one or a small neck. He goes on to say, a small orifice or a small neck occurs for many reasons, for it obtains whenever women married before maturity conceive and give birth, while the uterus is not fully grown or fundus of the uteri expanded.
Where's that condemnation of marrying before 18?
He is
or having sex
basically
before
going
18?
on and saying that these are problems. When there's a small orifice, it results in problems.
So now you're making the descriptive prescriptive error, because where is that prohibiting or speaking out or condemning child marriage? We didn't see that in that reference. So is there any other pre-modern scholar who condemns child marriage?
Again, I quoted Kim Phillips' book, Albertus Magnus.
They're not pre-modern scholars. Where is the citation?
They're writing in the 1300s.
Find me a quote. What is a quote from a scholar that says child marriage is wrong, not a descriptive statement?
You're asking me to give you exact wording, yet I can quote them basically condemning it in their own words or talking about the harms of it.
Where? Read it for me.
Again, I quoted, for example, Kim Phillips' book. She says, Albertus Magnus stated that while the physical changes associated with puberty enable boys and girls to feel desire and enter sexual relations, the seed in both parties was either too weak or not admitted, so the weak offspring nonetheless were a result. The notion that intercourse and childbearing at too early an age had deleterious effects and had great authority. However, in some views of Aristotle, translated by Giles of Rome, and they translated by John of English. She goes on to say, the knowing of women in kind and childing condemn sex before 15, for example. She quotes, again, Albertus Magnus, Giles of Rome.
None of what you quoted was a condemnation of child marriage.
Listen,
there are deleterious effects there are more likelihood of complication at that age, but you also have more complications at age 40 or 50. Is that just as immoral?
The medical experts say that's not a comparison. And again,
Which experts? You cited mortality and you cited uterine tears. Those are just as likely at age 50.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. I can cite you that. Well, pull up the National Health Institute and we can show you exactly the charts that show that.
My opening statement literally had studies showing that no, it is not. It is much worse. It's 5 times more likely under the age of 15.
You compared 15 to 25. You didn't compare 15 to 50 or 45. A woman at age 45 having a child is also very highly likely to get uterine tears.
Okay, then they should probably retire at that point. What's your point?
But your argument implies that is as immoral as child marriage.
Having a child at that age, if it's going to cause those kind of problems. But does it cause the psychiatric problems I mentioned? Does it cause the high risk of divorce? I can condemn child marriage because, again, I gave a cumulative case from all sorts of problems it causes.
All the things that you cited have holes in them.
I have to go to the next portion.
There is no pre-modern scholar that actually condemns child marriage. All of the citations that you just read show that they're making medical descriptions. They're not condemning. They're not saying this is immoral. So you're making the same descriptive, prescriptive fallacy that you accuse me of.
Again, I was going to cite the medical moral treatises on this issue, and the medical experts all agree this is harmful. So again, I'm making a evidentiary type argument where I say, look at all the evidence showing this. And again, we see this reflected in the society. Kim Phillips, again, in her book Medieval Maidens, points out that there was a lot of people concerned with having children too young. She cites kings and different rulers, different barons, basically saying, please wait until my daughter is this age before the marriage is consummated. So at one point, this girl Elizabeth, she cites in her book, was married young, but her father says you cannot consummate the marriage until after 16. A king over Aragorn said you have to wait until after 18, for example. So there was this concern, and they were basically trying to up the age at that point.
Wait, at what point were they upping the age?
In the Middle Ages, medieval period.
Yeah, they settled on the age 12. That was the minimum age.
No, Kim Phillips
That's
says
in canon
law is not a good representation of that. She says canon law is very limited understanding of what was going on. It's like today citing that in...
So cite me another example of a law that prohibited marriage.
I never said it was necessarily prohibited. I'm citing cultural aspects.
Okay, so that's my point. It was not prohibited.
The debate is not, did people in the Middle Ages allow child marriage? I agreed in my opening statement, yes, they did. And it was still harmful when they did. And a lot of people at the same time were like, hey, maybe we should up the age. And they were encouraging girls to wait many more years.
Yeah, but the debate is about the acceptability and the morality. So you have to explain why is 99% of humanity engaged in this grave, grave evil? Why is 1% of humanity in the modern period, magically, only within the past 300 years, suddenly discovering, oh, this is such a terrible, traumatic thing. This is so evil. There's so much harm coming from it. When you cite medical experts, for example, this is an important point, and you say that, oh, well, there is these harms that come from sexual relations with minors at the age of puberty or right around that age of pubescence, those are likelihoods. When you say morbidity, mortality, those are likelihoods. And if you're going to pin your argument on medical harm, then there are all kinds of sexual behaviors that cause medical harm. I cited having sex or being pregnant and having children with women over 35, over 40, over 50. Those are also extremely harmful. So if we take your moral argument, all of those kinds of sexual acts and reproduction should be also outlawed and should also be considered a grave moral evil. What about sodomy? What about, you should be in favor of laws that ban all of those practices.
Can I respond to two things there? For one, you said, why should we not ban it if it's harmful? And the other one was like, it's been so pervasive in cultures. Well, again, let's go to your own source, Bruce Ryan, who noted that he's got 4 pages of homosexual interaction between men and boys happening in cultures around the world for generations. Well, I could just say the same thing to you. If 99% of cultures before Western, including Islamic societies, were all okay with it, why don't we just let it go rampant again? We know it's harmful, according to Bruce Ryan.
Islamic societies did not consider sexual relations between men and boys as acceptable. They did condemn it. They considered it a grave evil.
Bruce Ryan quotes the silent.
It was practiced, yes, of course it was practiced. Yeah. And yeah, there was poetry about it, but that was seen as a perversion and heresy.
That's not my point.
You're ignorant about Islamic history. Islam has a complete rejection and prohibition of any kind of homosexual behavior.
Respond to some of these points.
But you're making this claim that is nonsense.
Let me respond.
Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, my point was not that Islam did not condemn it. I agree Islam condemned it. I quoted Bruce Ryan saying that. My point was, again, you're saying that child marriage was so pervasive, therefore, what's wrong with it? Well, again, homosexual hemophilic interaction was just as pervasive, according to your own source.
Where does it say that's more pervasive? Where does it say that was equally pervasive? Where does it say that?
He literally says this throughout his page. Look, this is
child marriage is as pervasive as...
He does not bring up child marriage.
Then what comparison are you making?
You're the one who quoted Bruce Ryan.
Yeah, in a different context, for a different purpose.
You cited it in your opening statement.
Yeah, but I didn't make that point. I'm not saying everything Bruce Ryan has ever said is correct. I'm saying this meta study that Bruce Ryan did with others showed that the sexual act between a minor and an adult is not inherently traumatic. It doesn't inherently cause psychological trauma. Yeah, I'll read you the abstract, since this is a point of dispute.
I have the actual study. I can read from that.
Yeah, it suffices to read the abstract.
Page 7, child sexual abuse researchers have repeatedly maintained that hemophilic interactions are innately and intensely harmful for the younger person.
That's what he's disputing. That's what the study
No, that's what he's saying. It's true.
No. Look, here's what it says. Many laypersons and professionals believe that child sexual abuse causes intense harm, regardless of gender, pervasively in the general population. The authors examined this belief by reviewing 59 studies based on college samples. Meta-analyses revealed that students with this kind of child sexual abuse were on average slightly less well-adjusted than controls. However, this poor adjustment could not be attributed to the sexual interaction because family environment was consistently confounded with that behavior. Family environment explained considerably more adjustment variance than the actual sexual act. So what he's saying, to summarize, is that you can't isolate the sexual act. What's happening is children are getting molested, children are getting abused by their family members or in this bad environment, and that bad environment or this abusive parent, that's what's causing the slightly lower adjustment levels or the trauma. It's not the sex itself, it's not the sexual act itself, and again, Ryan is not looking at marriage. He's not looking at these kinds of relationships that have existed, again, throughout history.
You're right, he's not looking at child marriage, so I don't know why you've been citing him for 4 years. But again, he says, what he's saying in his paper is that it's not harmful to the active partner. It's not a disorder. It's not like schizophrenia.
Not
but
this
he
study.
does say
Not
it is
this, where did this study mention the active partner? The abstract that I just read.
You got to read the actual study.
Are you citing the same study?
What's your study?
It's the Ryan, Tromovich, and Brosserman.
Yeah, I'm citing.
From
You're citing the 1998 one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm citing the one you said in your Harris Sultan one. Now the problem.
Why are you debating a previous debate? Like debate me in this debate.
You bring up stuff that your opponent has cited. That's how you prepare, Daniel. Now the problem with that study is it's an outlier.
What he brings in the opening statement. That's what you should debate.
That study you just cited is an outlier. Anna Sattler notes their findings in her book Predators. She notes that their findings are truly an outlier, and she cites numerous other meta-analyses that have found other results. A meta-analysis of the relationship of child sexual abuse to adult psychological adjustments from 1995. The long-term sequel of childhood sexual abuse in women, a meta-analytical review from 1996. A meta-analysis of the published research on the effects of child sexual abuse, as well as the prevalence of child sexual abuse in communities and student samples. Furthermore, Ryan even says in that 1998 meta-analysis that it was actually harmful to the girls. It wasn't harmful to the boys, is his argument. And he is still an outlier. So the irony of this is, again, your own study says it is harmful to the girls. Ryan is saying that in 1998.
He's saying that the harm is caused by the family environment.
He's saying that the girls report harm in the 1998 meta-analysis.
Yeah, and he attributes that. He does a correlation analysis, and he finds that it's more correlated with the family environment as opposed to the sexual act. That's why this study was so controversial. That's why it was
and an outlier.
Yeah, of course it's an outlier because look at the stigma. Like, look at the social stigma. Like, if you want to live and die by these psychological studies, then all the psychological studies right now say that, like the dominant studies all say that if a child at age 4, a boy, feels like he's actually a girl, then he should be put on hormone blockers and perhaps even get sex change surgery. So do you accept that? Do you agree with that psychological conclusion?
No, and I think there's actually research to challenge that. But again, we're talking about child marriage.
Do you disagree that the dominant research says that
I do not agree
gender-affirming care is necessary for... Okay, so you disagree. So in some cases, the dominant research can be false and very wrong, right?
Where's the evidence that's the dominant research? What studies?
Okay, so you're disputing that the dominant research today in psychology says that gender-affirming care should be provided to children as young as 4 years or 3 years old. You're denying that.
If you're doubting research, why are you even citing Bruce Ryan to begin with? Are you just cherry-picking the ones that support your view? I mean, you could just say, we can just doubt it when it's useful for us, or I'll just pick Bruce Ryan was useful.
I'm just countering the point that you made that whatever is the dominant claim about a certain topic, then we should just take that and ignore other kinds of factors. I'm not making a simplistic, like all you're doing is caricaturing my arguments. Like, oh, Daniel says that child marriage was common, therefore it's okay. Like, that's not my argument. You're caricaturing
what is your argument that it is okay?
My argument is a challenge to anyone who claims that it's not okay to explain why the attitudes shifted so radically. One of the reasons why the attitudes changed so radically is because of industrialization, is because of feminism. That explains the radical shift, not something inherent.
What study shows that?
Many studies. Look at
study shows that the reason we started condemning child marriage was not because of the medical experts.
The Anthropology of Childhood by David Lancy. Discovery and Invention in the History of Adolescence, published in the Journal of Adolescent Health. Children and Adolescents as Sexual Beings, a Historical Overview by Vern Bullough, 2004. How many more studies do you want?
Okay.
All of these studies show that these practices were pervasive. All you did to respond to that is, oh, the average age was 22 at a certain point in Europe. Like that's your counter.
My question was, where does the evidence? Do these studies say the reason we started condemning child marriage was because of industrialism and feminism? Do they say that?
Yes.
Read them.
I cited Montesquieu, the first Western expression against child marriage happened in 1748 with Montesquieu.
Because again, I have medical experts saying the reason it should not be practiced is because of all the harm it causes. Mental, physical, emotional, sexual.
We talk about every single factor, and your arguments don't make any sense.
Like what?
Like the fact that, okay, there's some likelihood of physical harm, like 2% chance of mortality for a child at age 12 or 10. You have the same mortality rate for a woman over 40.
No, girls ages 10
But you have
to 15
no problem. You have no problem with women over 40 having sex.
No, if they're going to cause problems, and the medical experts are telling them not to have children, they should listen to the medical experts.
If there were a taboo against women over 40 having sex, I bet the medical experts would say, oh, look at the mortality rate is the same for 12-year-old and 40-year-old, so therefore both should be condemned. But you don't see that.
Are basically hitting menopause. And so they can have sex just fine in their marriage without risking that kind of thing.
Well, we're talking about women who get pregnant, so they haven't hit menopause. Their risk of mortality, the normalized risk of mortality for those women is higher than women who are
doctor tells them
at
not
puberty.
to, then they shouldn't. Quite simple.
Okay, but why are doctors condemning one type? Do you think it could be, why are doctors condemning one side of the spectrum? Could it be because of social stigma? Because of being illegal?
No, it's because of the medical
Because your
experts.
argument basically boils down to medical researcher, child marriage is immoral because it's illegal.
No,
That's begging the question. We're asking, why is it illegal? Why is there a social
It
stigma?
causes severe mental and physical harm.
Where's the evidence for that?
Did you pay attention?
The physical harm, whenever I cite, you keep repeating physical harm, and I say the same kind of physical harm occurs with women who are over a certain age. And then you hand wave that and say, oh, well, but doctors aren't talking about women over 40. Well,
Again,
why not?
If a doctor tells a woman over 40 she should not have children because it can increase her risk of death, serious
why?
injury,
You're changing
no,
the scenario.
She should not be having a child.
Why are doctors writing so much about mortality at this bottom end of the age spectrum, but not at the top age of the age spectrum? That's what you're not explaining. I have an explanation. It's because of the social stigma.
Okay, because again, the research shows that women at this age, they're still psychologically and emotionally developing. When you force them into marriages too young, they have increased anxiety, depression, psychiatric disorders, increased risk of suicide. They're more likely to die. They can't raise children properly because they've not been educated enough. They've not been able to mentally mature enough. So again, the studies I'm citing show you have an increased risk of death for even their offspring and how they're raised up to the age of 5.
The rate of psychological maturity is also very contextual. It's very environmental. Children who are, or women at age 12-year-olds in Africa or 10-year-olds in Africa today are considered adults. Like, this category of adolescence is something that is a modern Western construct.
The research I cited was done in Africa.
Yeah, I know. So that's that kind of stigma that's attached from the West. That is what affects these health outcomes.
Then why do they have the same problems in there? Like, what are the same problems?
What problems?
The high rates of depression, suicide, mental disorders, psychiatric issues, they're all having these. And in fact, we also see increased risk of intimate partner violence.
Again, I need to see like what those studies are, because there's such a huge bias with the UN and global liberalism that is imposing this kind of
You heard it here
ban
first,
on
folks. It's a
child-
conspiracy.
Oh yeah, because liberal powers have never conspired to impose their values on the rest of the world.
Yeah,
Right?
well,
because the liberal West never made up stories about children being abused in Afghanistan to justify bombing them or going to war, invading Iraq because of the weapons of mass destruction that we know Saddam Hussein had. The West never has any kind of conspiracy theory to go and invade and bomb and colonize and take over Muslim or non-Muslim lands, right?
So all my studies
That's
are
all this.
conspiracy. All my studies are a conspiracy.
I cited so many studies that go directly contradictory to the things that you cited.
What studies did you cite mention child marriage? Modern studies on the effects of it today.
We'll read them again. The Anthropology of Childhood by David Lancey. Discovery and Invention in the History of Adolescence.
History?
Journal of Adolescence. Yeah, today is part of history.
I'm talking
the
about
historical
a study that is
progression. You can't get funding to show. Can you get funding to show that child marriage is a great thing?
Well, probably, yeah, outside of the U.S. in certain countries, but they all find harmful effects.
Outside of the U.S., you don't have research universities. All of the research universities in the Muslim world, for example, are funded by Western grants. So no, and they're deputized, and those universities are deputized to push UN standards, Western liberal standards.
So you think there's a massive scientific conspiracy to fund institutions around the world to show child marriage is harmful?
Do you realize that there are all kinds of research, again, that shows that gender-affirming care needs to be given to children at age 4?
Yes,
No, the dominant research shows that you need to give this gender-affirming care to children as young as 4. And increasingly, you're not going to find any studies that contradict this. Why? It's because of a conspiracy.
2 reasons. 1, there is research that can test that. And 1, this is a very recent thing. It's not been studied that much. Child marriage has been practiced and studied for decades. We know the effects. You're comparing apples to oranges.
It's been taboo and it's been illegal for centuries in the West.
Yeah, good thing, because of all the harm it causes.
No, the harm it causes is also something. It's again the same kind of thing with the harm that's caused by preventing a child from exploring his gender sexuality and gender fluidity. That's the harm that's being caused.
Again, you're comparing apples to oranges.
No, it's the same exact thing.
No.
The dominant research today says that's harmful, and those studies, like the contradictory studies that you're saying, oh no, children shouldn't be exploring their gender at age 4, those are transphobic studies, and they have to be condemned. And those professors that have those studies are being pushed out of their departments.
So you're basically saying it's wrong just to dismiss.
Do you think that's happening? Do you think that's happening or
I'm trying to
not?
ask you a question, sir.
Well, I'm asking you a question. Do you think that's the case? Do you think there's any pressure? Do you think there's any pressure on professors who say that gender-affirming care should not be given to kindergartners? Are they facing any pressure? Yes or no?
So you're basically saying the studies that they're arguing that this is wrong are basically being dismissed as transphobic and that's bad. You seem to be doing the same thing. You're just dismissing my studies that I cited as a Western conspiracy. Why do you get to dismiss all the studies you want as a Western conspiracy, but it's bad to dismiss other studies as transphobic?
No, I'm not dismissing those studies. I'm just showing the dynamics within these kinds of departments, within universities, and what you're describing as a conspiracy. Yeah, conspiracies do happen. Things that are socially taboo, like right now there's a new social taboo that you should not prohibit children from exploring their gender fluidity. That is the dominant status quo now, increasingly. And I'm saying that the status quo is sometimes very wrong. Just like there's been a status quo because of Western dominance against child marriage, minor marriage.
The mere existence of
someone like you prefers children to fornicate to their heart's content as opposed to get married.
False dichotomy, sir. False dichotomy. So let's get that. You're trying to say the mere existence of a conspiracy, like the moon landing is a conspiracy, and we all accept the moon landing happened. I mean, we know that's nonsense to deny the moon landing. We know just because there's a mere existence of a conspiracy is not evidence the conspiracy is true. You're just stating there's a conspiracy against child marriage. That doesn't make it magically the case that child marriage is okay. Just like we know the moon landing happened, right?
No, I'm just citing because you're making a big point about how there's no studies that show the benefits of child marriage. And I'm saying, yeah, because it's something that is a stigma. It's something that's illegal.
No. If you look at the systematic reviews, there are outlier studies. So a lot of times these researchers, if you read a lot of the studies I cited, will say, yeah, there was like 15 studies that showed that child marriage correlates with intimate partner violence, and one found no correlation. So there are studies that always are outside of the outlier. For example, I could cite a meta-analysis right now on religiosity and depression, 444 studies. Okay, 6% actually show a positive correlation between religiosity and depression, but 6% is still the outlier. In these studies, in these reviews, you can find outliers. Every now and then you'll come across a researcher that'll be like, okay, so in this study we found child marriage was mentally harmful in this way.
So then it's a wash. But then it's a wash. Then why are you staking so much of your claim on these studies? You're acknowledging that there are outliers, and you're acknowledging that sometimes it's the outliers that are correct and the dominant status quo is incorrect.
You need to show evidence.
So why are you? My argument wasn't based on showing that there are studies that prove that this is psychologically beneficial. That wasn't my argument.
Well, my
argument again was that this is childhood sexuality is a reality. Yeah. Your only response has been abstinence. You should just control yourself until you're 18. Yeah. You think, so this is a failed model. This does not work. You can't have children, teenagers with raging hormones practice abstinence. That's why we see such high levels of fornication, which according to, in the cross-examination, is as bad as child marriage.
I didn't say it was bad, I said they're both bad. I don't have to give them numbers or rates.
Yeah, you don't want to say which one is worse. That's convenient.
Because I'm a virtue ethicist and we don't do that kind of thing.
But the point is that you can't condemn fornication that's happening rampantly.
Yes, I can.
And you have no solution for that kind of child, for that kind of behavior amongst children.
My solution, again, is not putting out a kitchen in the fire by breaking the dam and flooding the neighborhood.
What is the solution?
Solve a problem with a problem.
Well, what is? Stop grandstanding and tell us the solution.
A better solution would be increased religiosity, more education, more extracurricular activities.
Sex education?
Education does show that there is a better understanding of sexual activity, and it does prevent the increased sort of fornication of this, because people start making better decisions in their life.
So there's no actual evidence that shows that this works. There's no evidence that shows that abstinence is something that has reduced fornication, reduced the levels of child pregnancy or teenage pregnancy.
Child marriages would reduce premarital sex?
Yes.
Wait, but your own study from Adam, your last debate with Naria, you cited a study from Adam.
Talk about this debate. Don't bring up my previous debates.
Because
I'm glad that you've watched all my debates. But let's talk about the studies in this debate.
Okay, let me cite a study then on this whole issue. Amy Adamczyk, Religion and Sexual Behavior, notes that in Islamic societies, which you cited last time, notes they have lower premarital sex. However, an earlier age at marriage does not appear to explain the relationship. So earlier marriage did not decrease premarital sex according to your own study that you cited last time.
She says, what about child marriage?
Okay, so I'll read you directly from. We find that ever married Hindus and Muslims are less likely to report having premarital sex than ever married Jews and Christians. And an earlier age at marriage does not appear to explain the relationship. So marrying as a child or as early marriage did not decrease premarital sex. Also, I left out an important detail in a lot of the studies I cited. Child marriage correlates with an increase in STDs, cervical cancer,
But the rates are much lower in Muslim countries. Yes, Adam Zick is the one who cites that.
Yes, but again, child marriages correlate with more STDs.
How does she define child marriage? Because the age of consent is much lower in Muslim countries, number one. And number two, no, I agree that there is an entire culture that prevents promiscuity. But marriage and chastity are encouraged in Islam. Gender roles are encouraged in Islam by law and by custom. But those things don't exist in the free liberal West, in this, the countries that are blessed by Protestant Christianity. So are you advocating the same kind of restrictions on gender mixing? Are you advocating for hijab? Are you advocating for all of these kinds of Islamic solutions to prevent the kind of child fornication that is so rampant in society?
They said they didn't explain the relationship. My point is that early marriage, child marriage, did not cause a decrease in premarital sex. So you can have an Islamic society without early child marriage and still decrease it. You can have a Orthodox traditional Christian society with low premarital sex without encouraging child or minor marriage. Also, again, in the studies I cited in my opening statement, what comes up a lot is an increase in STDs among the relationships where one is a child. Typically the girl, because that's typically what happens.
Child molestation, because it's stigmatized.
STDs.
Because marriage is stigmatized, so people are diddling kids in the closet.
Child marriages. That's more promiscuity.
Child marriages or child sex? Because you're equivocating.
Child marriages. The studies I cited show that there is an increase in STDs when a child marriage, when a society is aligned for child marriage.
Muslim countries?
Sub-Saharan African countries, Bangladesh.
Sub-Saharan.
Bangladesh. Those are the ones they were looked at.
Child marriage increases STDs. Bangladesh has extremely low STDs.
Not among the child marriages. Also in India as well.
What is the study? You're citing things that I've never heard before. Okay. That go contrary to all of this other evidence.
So the study is reproductive, I put in my opening statement, reproductive and sexual health consequences of child marriage, a review of the literature. And they say that here's the results. Child marriage as a result of poverty has many adverse consequences on reproductive and sexual health of girls. These include death during childbirth, physical and sexual violence, isolation, depression, cervical cancer, a risk of sexually transmitted diseases. Teen pregnant women are at a high risk of preterm birth as well as neonatal death more than other women.
Look. The thing with STDs, with all these kinds of problems that come that you're citing, preventing harms at this level, psychological harm, etc., it comes at a macro level. There's an entire system that Islam endorses of patriarchy, gender roles, chastity, high fertility, loyalty to the husband. These are all values that Islam as a whole endorses, and these are all things that are being attacked by liberal modernity, which liberal Christians like you endorse and support. And that's the problem. Yeah, if your solution for this dilemma that I posed for you of child fornication is just adopt all of these Islamic values or adopt patriarchy, but that's what you're implying by saying that there are Muslim countries who have low rates of premarital sex without child marriage, right? So how are they preventing premarital sex? I'm giving you the answer. It's because of all of these other patriarchal values.
I am perfectly fine.
So what is your solution?
I am perfectly fine with saying that Islam has some good things in it. I've never denied that. Again, I wanted to read another study before.
But those good things are solving the problem that you're not able to solve, that no Christian, modern Christian is able to solve.
Health consequences of child marriage in Africa says a common belief is that child marriage protects girls from promiscuity and therefore disease. The reality is quite different. Married girls are more likely than unmarried girls to become infected with STDs, in particular HIV. So this idea you've been arguing that somehow we need to have child marriage is going to reduce promiscuity.
You're not talking about Muslim countries, though.
This idea that you're promoting that we need to allow child marriage because this can prevent fornication and promiscuity in the West is false. We see an increase in STDs. We see an increase in HIV, cervical cancer. That's what these studies I cited are kind of going over.
Sub-Saharan Africa is notorious for HIV. It's notorious for child rape. It's notorious for all kinds of war. And by the way, Sub-Saharan Africa is Christian. There is a huge disparity between Muslim Africa and Christian Africa when it comes to HIV specifically and STDs. So you are citing very biased or non-representative studies when you're citing Sub-Saharan Africa. Those are Christian Africans, not Muslim Africans. Muslims are in North Africa, not in Sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah, I know. I'm pointing this out to show you how bad child marriage is. You're the one saying child marriage is great. It's going to lower fornication.
No, I didn't say that I did not say that child marriage is the magic bullet that is going to solve fornication. But it's definitely a factor as a part of an entire system of patriarchy and gender norms and chastity that liberal Christians like you are opposed to.
And again, your own study shows that early child marriage does not help to reduce premarital sex. It did not mediate it in any
Nothing showed that. You cited Sub-Saharan Africa. Again, those aren't Muslim countries.
back to Amy's study.
Yeah, and
Amy again
I
shows
explained
that-
the Adams-Zick study that it's not just, again, child marriage that prevents the premarital
They say it
sex.
prevents nothing. It's not even, it doesn't mediate the relationship at all.
Yeah, because it's banned. It's outlawed. In Muslim countries, it's banned as well.
Not in the country she was looking at.
Where does she say that?
Let me pull it up then.
All of these Muslim countries are under UN international law where child marriage is banned. It's a human rights violation.
It still is practiced in a lot of these countries, like
Okay, so
Niger,
if it's
Mali.
practiced, then that would be the explanation for why there's lower rates of premarital
She
sex.
says that's not. This says that's exactly. It's not
So
the
that's,
reason.
you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth.
No, I'm pointing out what the
that
study
it's
says.
illegal.
Just because something's illegal doesn't mean it's not practiced.
Yeah,
They do
so
lots of things that are legal.
Where was her analysis that child marriage specifically did not reduce premarital sex?
In all of the countries she looked
How
at.
was she able to determine that?
The countries she looked at were Nigeria, Chad, Guinea, Mali, Niger, Azerbaijan, Zambia, Moldova, Haiti, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Ukraine, Madagascar, Cambodia.
And where does she say that child marriage did not prevent premarital sex?
I already quoted it for you.
What was her explanation, though?
The point is that when they
You
run
can
the
read the
laws,
explanation?
it does not mediate it. So she says there is no. The explanation is child marriage or early marriage did not mediate a relationship that reduced premarital sex.
Where is she making a causal claim that it does not cause less? That does not cause less premarital sex. That's what I'm looking for. Otherwise, it's just again descriptive.
Yeah, that's what you have to do in these studies. You can't, even as you've admitted in your past debate, you can't necessarily find a causal link.
Correlation does not
it's-
mean
it's
causation.
evidence
You're
of
applying
something.
causation. You're saying that you're countering my argument by saying that, well, child marriage does not cause a lower rate of premarital sex.
Yeah, and this is a study that shows evidence of that.
She's saying that there's no correlation. She doesn't say anything about causation.
She doesn't say anything about causation, she says correlation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you're making a causal claim.
I'm saying that's evidence, to use your own phrase. It's, like when you were debating Tom
absence
Jump.
of evidence.
Remember when you were debating Tom Jump, you said you don't believe in the harm principle, but the harm is evidence of something that is bad. Right, in these studies, this is evidence that once again doesn't mediate the relationship.
No, you're saying that there's no cause between child marriage and a decrease in premarital sex.
I'm saying there's
Is
no
that correct?
relationship. I'm saying there's no relationship.
There's no relationship. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this one study doesn't show a relationship, therefore there's no relationship.
I'm saying there's no evidence of it.
Okay, there's no evidence that you know of.
Yeah, and you don't have any. You've not provided any.
Right. So that my claim.
Right, exactly.
My claim to you was not regarding the evidence of that or not. My claim was provide a solution. Why? How can you reduce the rates of fornication that you're supposedly so much against?
Increase religiosity, more education.
Why don't you just ban it?
parenting.
Why don't you just ban it?
Why don't you ban
You're in
fornication?
favor of banning. You're in favor of banning child marriage. So why can't you ban fornication for anyone not married?
We do. You can't sleep with a minor.
It's against the law.
It's called statutory rape.
No. Between 2 10-year-olds. Why can't 2 8-year-olds have sex?
Are we going to throw 8-year-olds in prison because they can't even consent to each other? Is that your argument?
No. Are you in favor of laws that ban 2 8-year-olds fornicating?
I would be totally in favor of preventing it. I don't know how you make it that a law, because again, they can't even
Why
consent.
not? You have a law against child marriage, so why can't you have a law against fornication?
Let's walk through this.
For 10-year-olds.
Let's walk through
9-year-olds.
this.
Why?
Let's walk through this.
Yeah, let's
You want to say, okay, so we're going to ban 2 10-year-olds from having sex. What happens if they have sex?
They are punished for that.
How?
There are sanctions. They could serve prison time. I don't know. There's some punishment on the law that makes it illegal.
So we're going to throw 9-year-olds
it's
in
hard
prison.
for you to imagine. It's hard
because
for you to imagine.
they had
But by the way,
sex.
this is Mosaic law. By the way, this is what Christianity has advocated. By the way, this is what canon law advocated. If 2 10-year-olds fornicate, they are punished according to Christian law, according to Mosaic law. This is so hard for you to
It
imagine.
would be quite simple for me to say they should be separated first of all. They should have to go through some sort of rehab type thing where
Prison?
they learn that they should not be doing this at 10.
Juvie?
No, not juvie. That's
Why
horrible.
not? Why not? So why
You're
are you
gonna
so
throw them in there with murderers.
someone who practices child marriage, like a 25-year-old with a 17-year-old, he should be locked up, right?
Yeah.
But 2 10-year-olds fornicating, that they should just have some nice rejuvenation or
10-year-olds
rehabilitation.
cannot consent.
They're consenting with each other.
They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. So what are you going to do to punish them?
Again,
In the same way,
rehabilitation.
in the same way that you're going to punish the 25-year-old.
Okay, 25-year-old can consent and knows what he's doing.
A
That's far
17-year-old
different.
doesn't know what sex is.
At that point, a nation has to be defined by laws, Daniel. We just can't be like, oh, well, this
But
person's
you're not in
now
favor-
mentally
you're in-
mature.
you're in
Can I
favor-
finish my thought before you interrupt me? For once, maybe? So once again, we have to be a nation of laws. We cannot just have every single child go to a judge and a medical expert, get a brain exam to know. We know puberty is complete in most people by 17, so the next age we grant is 18. This is a much simpler system. Sure, it comes with trade-offs, but when you're building a political system, there's going to be trade-offs. And so we set the age of consent at 18, age of adulthood at 18, because that's when puberty is complete in almost all individuals.
Got just 2 minutes left.
So all I heard is a bunch of rambling, but no explanation for what kind of punishments or what kind of laws you would impose to curb fornication amongst children. You haven't given any kind.
What laws
No,
can
it
we
is.
do? The
It's
debate
about
is
child sex
marriage.
Yeah, exactly. You're in favor of laws that ban child marriage and have very severe consequences for child marriage. But I asked you about fornication, and you said that that is immoral. You're not going to say if it's more or less immoral than child marriage, by the way. But I'm asking you what kind of laws would be parallel to prohibit fornication and curb that problem.
Okay, I think adultery is wrong, but I don't think it should be illegal because.
Then why is child marriage? Why do you think child marriage should be illegal?
Because you're harming a child, as I explained in my opening statement.
Are two children fornicating, harming each other?
Yes, they are, but they don't know what they're doing because they can't consent.
So how do you curb that? How do you create a stigma about that? How do
30
you
seconds.
make it illegal?
How do we make it illegal?
You don't have a laissez-faire attitude about fornication.
You keep wanting to
but you
debate
want the
about
hammer
facts,
of the
not
law.
actually what child
You want the
marriage is.
hammer of the law for child marriage, but fornication is something that it's unfortunate, but these are kids. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, kids do.
That's
Most of the time they don't know what they're
That's
doing.
inconsistent. Like
No,
that's the
kids
problem.
don't know what they're doing. That's the way kids typically are, and that's why we
Kids
help
know what
train them
sex
and grow
is.
them up.
Kids know-
Rehabilitation is much better for this
Kids
kind of thing.
We have
Than
to
throwing them
move.
in prison like they're adults or like they're committed murder or
Gentlemen,
something.